Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
The narrative structure of Ne Zha 2 is carefully designed to balance epic mythological spectacle with intimate character development, ensuring that each scene serves multiple purposes, advancing the plot, deepening emotional resonance, exploring philosophical themes, and showcasing technical innovation in animation. The opening sequence situates the audience immediately in a post-catastrophe world. Ne Zha's physical body lies in ruins after his sacrificial act in the first film, and Ao Bing, similarly, exists as a disembodied spirit. This shared liminal state introduces the central narrative tension, two consciousnesses inhabiting a single physical vessel. The filmmakers immediately use visual storytelling to convey this duality. Subtle overlays of ethereal flames and water currents trace each character's presence within the body, signaling internal conflict and cooperation. This opening establishes the emotional stakes, allowing the audience to connect with the protagonist's vulnerability and struggle before the first act of physical adventure begins. Early scenes explore the human realm and its interactions with the divine. Lady Yin and Li Jing, aware of Ne Zha's survival in spiritual form, navigate fear, hope, and responsibility. The filmmakers employ cinematographic techniques to differentiate mortal perception from divine perception. Scenes in human villages feature warm color palettes, grounded camera angles, and naturalistic lighting to evoke relatability and intimacy, contrasting sharply with the ethereal blues, glowing reds, and dynamic lighting used in scenes with spirits, dragons, and immortal interventions. This contrast emphasizes the scale of Ne Zha and Ao Bing's journey, reminding viewers that their actions, though mythological, have tangible human consequences. Emotional beats are highlighted through facial animation and body language, demonstrating the studio's mastery of 3D character modeling and rendering. Lady Yin's subtle trembling, Li Jing's tightening grip on his sword, and Ne Zha's restless energy all communicate complex feelings without reliance on dialogue. The first major narrative arc involves the retrieval of the initial fragments of the seven-colored precious lotus. The lotus, a symbolic artifact representing renewal, balance, and the synthesis of cosmic energies, is not merely a plot device but a thematic symbol recurring throughout the film. Each fragment recovered corresponds to a personal lesson for the protagonists. The sequence set within the Dragon King's sunken palace exemplifies this dual narrative and technical ambition. Water, representing Ao Bing's essence and emotional restraint, fills the palace in shifting currents, while fire, representing Ne Zha's chaotic energy, ignites magical confrontations. This dynamic environment reflects the internal negotiation of power between the two characters. Combat choreography employs both individual character abilities and collaborative techniques, emphasizing that their survival depends on communication, mutual understanding, and complementary skills. Every action is imbued with narrative meaning, showing that spectacle and storytelling are inseparable in this cinematic universe. Secondary characters enrich both the thematic complexity and world building. Among them, the Dragon King's subordinates are portrayed as loyal yet conflicted, reflecting the broader theme of generational tension and the struggle between duty and personal morality. The immortal sex apprentices and sub-leaders provide nuanced moral perspectives. Some act out of fear, others out of ambition, and a few out of genuine belief in cosmic balance. Their actions complicate the moral landscape, highlighting the ethical ambiguity central to the narrative. In one sequence, an apprentice's hesitation during combat leads to unintended consequences, resulting in a dramatic moral reckoning that reinforces the narrative's insistence that every decision, however minor, has rippling effects across realms. Mid-film sequences focus on character development through interpersonal conflict. Ne Zha and Ao Bing's shared body necessitates constant negotiation. Humor arises organically, often through disagreements over movement, choices, or strategy, yet these moments are interwoven with serious emotional undertones. For instance, when Ne Zha attempts a reckless act, Ao Bing's restrained intervention provokes both frustration and reflection. The filmmakers utilize split-screen visual metaphors, ethereal overlays, and subtle shifts in posture and gaze to illustrate the character's internal dialogue. These scenes exemplify the studio's attention to detail, ensuring that narrative, performance, and visual language operate in harmony. The film's thematic richness is further enhanced by its exploration of cultural and mythological motifs. Dragons, in Chinese mythology, are complex symbols of power, wisdom, and natural forces, and Ne Zha too leverages these associations to deepen the narrative. The Dragon King's palace is meticulously designed to reflect traditional architectural elements, water symbolism, and hierarchical order. Scenes of the Dragon King deliberating over ancestral expectations juxtapose ancient wisdom with contemporary ethical dilemmas, showing the tension between tradition and progress. Similarly, the immortal celestial citadels blend Taoist iconography with fantastical reinterpretation, symbolizing the delicate balance between order and manipulation, authority and moral responsibility. These carefully crafted environments provide visual storytelling that complements dialogue and action, enhancing immersion and thematic depth. The second act of the film intensifies both conflict and philosophical inquiry. The protagonist's journey brings them into direct confrontation with immortal authority and the consequences of divine politics. Battles are choreographed with increasing complexity, integrating environmental hazards, multi-layered magical effects, and the synchronized abilities of Ne Zha and Ao Bing. Here, animation achieves narrative function, the interplay of fire and water, light and shadow, and physical movement conveys both external action and internal transformation. The protagonist's dialogue is simultaneously strategic, humorous, and reflective, reinforcing the intertwined nature of emotional growth and heroic action. Philosophically, the film interrogates the concept of moral authority. Immortals claim to act for the greater good, yet their methods involve coercion, deception, and ethical compromise. Dragons assert traditional supremacy, yet their insistence on rigid hierarchy risks alienation and stagnation. Ne Zha and Ao Bing navigate these tensions, modeling ethical decision-making that balances personal integrity, empathy, and practical necessity. These explorations elevate Ne Zha too beyond conventional hero narratives, positioning it as a meditation on ethical complexity, leadership, and the responsibilities of power. The climactic sequences integrate narrative, visual, and auditory mastery. The final confrontation spans multiple realms, including celestial domains, mortal villages, and dragon palaces. Elements of fire, water, wind, and mystical energy are dynamically animated to reflect character psychology and plot tension. The fusion of Ne Zha's fire and Ao Bing's water during these sequences symbolizes both cooperation and the reconciliation of duality, visually encoding the narrative's thematic resolutions. Emotional stakes remain central, moments of hesitation, recognition of past errors, and acts of self-sacrifice are interwoven with large-scale spectacle, ensuring the audience remains invested in both character outcomes and mythological consequences. The resolution is both satisfying and thematically resonant. Ne Zha and Ao Bing achieve full bodily restoration, symbolizing personal growth and individuation after shared trials. Their separation signifies liberation while affirming the value of interdependence and empathy. The immortals confront the ramifications of their manipulations, reinforcing the ethical lesson that power untempered by conscience carries consequences. Dragons and humans move toward tentative reconciliation, reflecting the broader philosophical theme that coexistence is achieved not through dominance but through understanding, negotiation, and moral courage. Symbolic motifs, the restored lotus, converging celestial and earthly light, and elemental harmony, underscore these resolutions, blending narrative closure with mythological and philosophical resonance. Minor characters throughout the film also contribute to thematic richness. Villagers, celestial attendants, dragon subordinates, and sect apprentices each have moments where their choices influence outcomes, reinforcing the interconnectedness of all beings and the cascading effects of ethical action. These narrative threads ensure that the world of Ne Zha too feels alive, morally complex, and consistent with the overarching themes of destiny, agency, and interdependence. Cinematically, the film continues to innovate. Visual effects integrate volumetric lighting, fluid simulation, particle dynamics, and realistic material textures to achieve unprecedented immersion. The film's soundtrack, blending traditional Chinese instrumentation with Western orchestral elements, aligns with on-screen action and character development, enhancing both tension and emotional resonance. Dialogue is meticulously written to balance humor, gravitas, and philosophical reflection, ensuring accessibility for global audiences while maintaining cultural authenticity. The interplay between narrative, visuals, and sound demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of animation as a holistic art form. In summary, Ne Zha 2 represents a landmark achievement in animated storytelling, merging mythological richness, philosophical inquiry, character-driven drama, and technical innovation. Its narrative complexity, thematic depth, and visual sophistication elevate it beyond conventional animated films, creating a cinematic experience that resonates across cultures. The careful integration of myth, morality, emotional growth, and visual spectacle ensures that Ne Zha 2 is not merely entertainment but a culturally significant and philosophically engaging work, capable of inspiring reflection, discussion, and admiration across generations. Beyond the central figures of Ne Zha and Ao Bing, Ne Zha 2 features a rich ensemble of secondary characters whose arcs, interactions, and symbolic roles significantly enhance the depth of the narrative. Each of these characters functions not only as a narrative catalyst but also as a reflection of broader themes such as moral ambiguity, societal hierarchy, the burden of legacy, and the tension between personal desire and communal responsibility. Among these, the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas are particularly noteworthy. Each Dragon King possesses a distinct personality, domain, and philosophical orientation, which enrich the story with moral complexity and visual diversity. The East Sea Dragon King, traditionally associated with courage and righteousness, embodies measured authority and a sense of cosmic responsibility, often clashing with younger or more impetuous characters who challenge the old order. The South Sea Dragon King is more strategic and cunning, representing the adaptability and subtlety of power. The North Sea Dragon King, proud and fiercely protective of his realm, underscores the theme of sacrifice for one's people. Finally, the West Sea Dragon King, whose temperament is volatile yet noble, reflects the dangers of unbalanced ambition and the fine line between justice and vengeance. By giving each Dragon King unique motivations, personality traits, and elemental visual motifs, glowing blue scales for the East Sea, deep green and forest-like tones for the South, icy silver for the North, and fiery amber for the West, the filmmakers deepen the mythological authenticity of the story while visually codifying their symbolic roles. The supporting human characters are equally nuanced. Li Jing and Lady Yin's friends, colleagues, and fellow townspeople, though appearing in brief sequences, provide insight into the societal pressures and collective fears surrounding Ne Zha's rebirth. These characters offer narrative friction, expressing skepticism, reverence, or fear, which heightens tension and reminds viewers that Ne Zha's struggle is both personal and societal. Each reaction from the community mirrors historical and cultural attitudes toward divine or predestined individuals in classical Chinese mythology, respect mingled with fear, hope mingled with caution, reverence mingled with resentment. These subtleties are expressed not just through dialogue but also through background animation, environmental design, and crowd movement, techniques that reinforce the world's realism while subtly conveying societal dynamics. The secondary deities and immortals, particularly those connected to Tai Zhenren, further expand the philosophical and ethical landscape of the film. Minor immortals, disciples, and celestial observers populate scenes with moral, intellectual, or narrative commentary, often guiding or challenging the protagonists indirectly. Their presence highlights the layers of celestial hierarchy, the consequences of power misuse, and the theme that even seemingly minor actors within a divine system carry the weight of ethical responsibility. These characters often operate in shadowy corridors, on floating platforms, or in ethereal dreamscapes, reinforcing the sense that the cosmos is populated with intricate moral and metaphysical interactions that extend far beyond the central action. The film's subplots are interwoven with the main narrative in ways that deepen thematic resonance. For example, Ne Zha's interaction with ordinary mortals during his travels underscores his growing understanding of empathy, community, and consequence. Scenes in which he aids townspeople, intervenes in conflicts, or reflects on the consequences of past actions function not merely as filler but as character-building exercises that highlight the protagonist's moral development. Similarly, Ao Bing's internal journey is mirrored by small narrative arcs involving young dragons, celestial messengers, and other magical beings, providing both symbolic resonance and emotional foreshadowing. These secondary plots are carefully paced to allow the audience to absorb narrative subtleties without losing momentum in the primary storyline. Hidden references and Easter eggs abound, enriching the experience for attentive viewers. Visual motifs drawn from classical Chinese literature, painting, and folklore are seamlessly integrated into backgrounds, costumes, and even action choreography. For example, fleeting depictions of traditional Chinese deities or mythological beasts in temple murals, celestial tapestries, or the swirling patterns of energy during battle sequences reward viewers with knowledge of cultural and historical symbolism. The seven-colored precious lotus itself, beyond its narrative function, references a broader canon of symbolic colors in Taoist and Buddhist traditions, each hue carrying spiritual, moral, or cosmological significance. Similarly, certain elemental animations echo Taoist philosophical diagrams, the interaction of fire, water, earth, metal, and wood, subtly reinforcing the theme that Ne Zha and Ao Bing's journey mirrors cosmic balance. The production team also incorporated numerous subtle cues to the first Ne Zha film, creating a sense of continuity and rewarding longtime fans. Visual callbacks, recurring phrases, symbolic objects, and parallel scenarios remind viewers of past struggles, triumphs, and lessons learned, while simultaneously establishing the sequel as a self-contained narrative capable of introducing new audiences to the mythology and characters. These intertextual elements demonstrate the filmmaker's careful attention to narrative cohesion, ensuring that Ne Zha 2 functions simultaneously as an epic standalone story and a continuation of an evolving mythological universe. Another fascinating aspect of the film is its exploration of emotional and psychological nuance through environmental storytelling. Locations themselves, from celestial palaces suspended in clouds to bioluminescent underwater dragon cities, to serene lotus gardens and storm-racked battlefields, are not merely backdrops but active participants in the narrative. They mirror characters' internal states, foreshadow future events, and reinforce thematic undertones. For instance, a scene in which Ne Zha confronts an inner fear may occur within a mirrored lotus pond reflecting fractured skies, symbolizing both vulnerability and the potential for rebirth. Conversely, battles against dragon kings often occur amidst swirling storm clouds and crashing waves, emphasizing chaos, uncertainty, and the struggle to assert agency in a hostile world. These design choices reflect a holistic approach to filmmaking, in which character, environment, and narrative are inseparably interwoven. The animation process itself reveals the dedication and technical sophistication involved in the film's creation. Advanced volumetric simulations were used to render elemental effects with remarkable realism, while motion capture and traditional keyframe animation were combined to produce fluid, expressive character movements. Lighting, color grading, and compositing were meticulously designed to evoke emotional resonance, highlight symbolic elements, and maintain visual coherence across complex sequences. Production notes indicate that teams studied classical Chinese art, martial arts choreography, and environmental physics to ensure that every detail, from the swirl of a dragon's tail to the ripple of fire around Ne Zha's wheels, was both visually stunning and thematically coherent. The result is a cinematic experience that immerses viewers fully, making the mythological universe of Ne Zha 2 feel tangible, vibrant, and alive. In terms of narrative symbolism, the film repeatedly emphasizes cycles of destruction and renewal. Fire and water, often portrayed in conflict, ultimately converge to signify balance, cooperation, and the reconciliation of opposing forces. Ne Zha and Ao Bing's union, internal and external, is emblematic of this principle. Disparate elements, elemental, moral, spiritual, and emotional, must align for true resolution to occur. The seven-colored precious lotus, continually appearing in both literal and metaphorical forms, reinforces this theme. Growth, rebirth, and the transcendence of limitations require both internal harmony and external action. These symbolic threads run throughout secondary arcs, subplots, and even subtle background details, creating a layered tapestry that rewards repeated viewing and careful analysis. Finally, the global reception of Ne Zha 2 confirms the film's universal resonance. Critics and audiences alike praised its ability to combine myth, spectacle, and human emotion in a way that transcends cultural boundaries. Academic commentary highlights the film's contribution to the recognition of Chinese mythological cinema on the world stage, its role in challenging traditional Western-centric animation dominance, and its influence on cross-cultural narrative techniques. Fan communities worldwide have dissected its themes, character arcs, and symbolic motifs, demonstrating that the film invites both emotional engagement and intellectual inquiry. Its box office success, critical acclaim, and enduring popularity reflect a work of art that speaks simultaneously to local cultural identity and global storytelling aspirations. To fully appreciate Ne Zha 2, one must examine the mythological roots from which it springs, and how these ancient narratives are reinterpreted for modern audiences. Ne Zha, as a figure, originates from Investiture of the Gods, Fengshen Yanni, a 16th-century Chinese novel that blends history, legend, and moral philosophy. Within this text, Ne Zha is a child born under extraordinary circumstances, endowed with divine powers, and bound by a preordained fate that challenges conventional notions of morality and responsibility. The novel portrays him as both a hero and a transgressor, a figure whose immense strength is accompanied by impulsive behavior and conflict with authority figures. By adapting these characteristics into a cinematic narrative, the filmmakers of Ne Zha 2 preserve the essence of Ne Zha's mythological identity while providing the flexibility to explore psychological complexity and relational dynamics. Ao Bing, the Dragon Prince, similarly originates from mythological archetypes of water deities and dragon kings, embodying balance, patience, and the forces of nature. By merging their spirits within a single corporeal form, the film symbolically explores the intersection of opposing forces, fire and water, rebellion and restraint, mortal desire and divine duty. The battle sequences in Ne Zha 2 are not merely action set pieces, they function as narrative exegesis, illustrating the philosophical and ethical dilemmas central to the film. Each clash of elemental power is choreographed with attention to storytelling as well as spectacle. For example, when Ne Zha and Ao Bing confront a rogue dragon king, the battle illustrates not only the tension between characters but the broader conflict between personal freedom and cosmic law. Fire, water, wind, and lightning are not simply decorative elements, they carry metaphorical weight. Ne Zha's fire reflects both his destructive potential and his inner vitality, while Ao Bing's water reflects adaptability, empathy, and moral introspection. The choreography of battles emphasizes the interplay between these forces, demonstrating that victory requires not only physical skill but ethical judgment and psychological cohesion. Furthermore, the film's animation technology allows for dynamic shifts in perspective, scale, and detail, immersing viewers in the mythic intensity of each encounter while maintaining narrative clarity. Particle simulations, volumetric lighting, and advanced physics engines create a cinematic experience comparable to high-end live-action blockbusters, demonstrating the technical mastery of the production team. In addition to the main narrative, Ne Zha 2 explores several subplots that enrich the mythological and emotional landscape. Mortals impacted by supernatural events offer contrasting perspectives on heroism, consequence, and fate. The film portrays villagers who are both awed and terrified by the manifestations of divine power, reminding audiences that even godlike figures operate within a relational universe where their actions ripple outward. These side plots provide grounding for the narrative, ensuring that the story remains emotionally relatable even amid spectacular celestial conflicts. Similarly, the interactions among the immortals of Yusu Palace reveal the complexities of power structures, institutional morality, and hierarchy. Some immortals manipulate circumstances for personal gain, while others act out of genuine concern, highlighting the ethical ambiguities inherent in leadership. Through these subplots, the film underscores the tension between individual action and systemic constraint, a theme with broad cultural and philosophical resonance. The symbolism embedded throughout the film deepens its narrative impact. Fire and water, for example, operate as recurring motifs representing the duality of Ne Zha and Ao Bing's coexistence. This duality extends to broader themes of identity, destiny, and moral choice. The seven-colored precious lotus, central to the film's plot, functions symbolically as a site of transformation and reconciliation. It embodies the potential for restoration and renewal, while also highlighting the ethical weight of intervention in natural or divine order. Similarly, environmental symbolism, including the interplay of celestial light, shadow, and color, communicates emotional subtext. Celestial realms bathed in pale, ethereal light suggest introspection, divine authority, or spiritual tension, while fiery battlefields convey urgency, chaos, and the potency of agency. The filmmaker's meticulous attention to these visual and thematic cues ensures that the narrative communicates on multiple levels, simultaneously engaging intellect, emotion, and aesthetic sensibility. Comparatively, Ne Zha 2 occupies a unique position in the landscape of global animation. While many Western animated epics focus on linear hero journeys, comedy, or moral simplicity, Ne Zha 2 integrates complex psychological realism, layered mythological references, and moral ambiguity. In this sense, it aligns more closely with epic storytelling traditions found in works like Princess Mononoke or Spirited Away, where fantasy serves as a vehicle for exploring philosophical, ethical, and environmental questions. However, Ne Zha 2 differentiates itself through the integration of Chinese mythological structures, cosmology, and historical aesthetics. Its dual consciousness narrative device is especially innovative, allowing for a rich exploration of identity, sacrifice, and interpersonal dynamics within a framework that is simultaneously fantastical and psychologically sophisticated. The cultural and global impact of Ne Zha 2 is significant. Domestically, it reinvigorated interest in classical Chinese mythology among younger audiences, inspiring renewed engagement with traditional literature, folklore, and artistic styles. Internationally, the film introduced audiences to mythological frameworks largely unfamiliar in Western popular culture, demonstrating that culturally specific storytelling can achieve universal resonance. Critical reception emphasized the film's balance of spectacle, narrative depth, and thematic sophistication. Reviewers highlighted its ability to appeal to diverse audiences, from children captivated by the visual spectacle to adults appreciating its ethical, psychological, and philosophical undertones. The English-language dub, featuring accomplished voice actors, facilitated cross-cultural accessibility without diluting the original narrative's emotional and thematic complexity. The film's success has broader implications for the animation industry. With a global gross exceeding $2.2 billion, Ne Zha 2 set records for the highest-grossing animated film, the highest-grossing non-English language film, and among the top-grossing films worldwide. This unprecedented achievement demonstrates that high-quality, culturally rooted animation can achieve commercial success without conforming to Hollywood formulas. It has inspired animation studios worldwide to explore diverse mythologies, cultural narratives, and experimental storytelling techniques, signaling a potential paradigm shift in global animation production and distribution. Analysts have coined the term Ne Zha effect to describe this influence, reflecting the film's role in shaping perceptions of the global viability of non-Western animation. Finally, the legacy of Ne Zha 2 extends beyond box office performance. Its combination of narrative sophistication, mythological depth, visual innovation, and psychological realism establishes a benchmark for contemporary animation. It demonstrates the potential for cross-cultural resonance when storytelling respects its cultural origins while engaging universal human experiences. By exploring themes of identity, sacrifice, friendship, morality, and destiny within a visually stunning and technologically advanced framework, the film offers lessons for creators, audiences, and scholars alike. The ongoing discussion surrounding its narrative, characters, symbolism, and cultural significance ensures that Ne Zha 2 will remain a focal point of animation studies, mythological reinterpretation, and cross-cultural cinematic achievement for decades to come. Its influence will likely be seen in future animated features, both within China and globally, as filmmakers seek to replicate its balance of spectacle, psychological depth, and cultural authenticity. Ne Zha 2 is, therefore, not simply a sequel or a blockbuster, it is a milestone in the evolution of animation, storytelling, and cultural representation on the world stage. Its enduring significance lies in its ability to merge myth, philosophy, emotion, and artistry into a cohesive, compelling, and transformative cinematic experience. The opening sequence of Ne Zha 2 immediately establishes the film's dual narrative and visual tone. The camera sweeps across a storm-lashed ocean, the turbulent waves reflecting the inner turmoil of the two souls sharing one body. Ne Zha's fiery essence ignites flashes of red lightning above the water, while Ao Bing's calm aura creates shimmering ripples that contrast with the chaos. This interplay between fire and water not only foreshadows the protagonist's internal struggle but also symbolically represents the balance they must achieve. From a production standpoint, the storm sequences were among the most technically challenging, requiring multi-layered fluid simulations that blended realistic ocean physics with fantastical energy effects. Artists had to integrate particle-based lightning, volumetric fog, and dynamic reflections on water surfaces to ensure a cohesive visual flow. The result is a sequence that functions simultaneously as a metaphor for internal conflict and as a display of cutting-edge animation. Early dialogue scenes are subtle but rich in psychological subtext. Ne Zha's brash, impulsive remarks clash with Ao Bing's measured, restrained responses, often causing literal hiccups in their shared bodies' movements. These moments, while comedic on the surface, function as precise storytelling tools. They externalize the process of internal negotiation between conflicting impulses, anger and caution, assertiveness and diplomacy, self-interest and ethical responsibility. The filmmakers use visual cues to reinforce these dynamics. The body's shadow elongates or splits, hair and clothing respond differently to emotional surges, and lighting subtly shifts to reflect each personality's dominance. These nuances required meticulous animation layering, with separate rigs controlling micro-expressions and motion vectors that allowed the characters' duality to be visible even in quiet dialogue-driven scenes. The journey to the seven-colored sacred lotus is punctuated by episodic trials that are rich in symbolic and mythological meaning. The first trial, set in a forest imbued with living magic, challenges the characters to confront their own fears. The forest is visually designed to evoke classical Chinese brush painting, yet each tree and leaf responds dynamically to the characters' emotions, glowing or twisting in accordance with their mental state. Here, Ne Zha must confront his fear of failure and the lingering guilt from the previous film, while Ao Bing grapples with doubts about his worthiness and loyalty. Each challenge in the forest is crafted not as a mere obstacle but as an allegorical test. The forest's sentient branches represent the entanglement of past mistakes, societal expectations, and self-doubt. The audience experiences these symbolic trials viscerally, feeling the tension, unease, and eventual resolution as the characters reconcile internally. The film's midsection introduces a sequence involving the Dragon King emissaries, which serves both as an external conflict and a reflection of Ao Bing's psychological landscape. The emissaries are depicted as massive, intricately designed dragons with flowing, semi-transparent scales that glint in a spectrum of colors. They represent ancestral judgment and inherited expectations, embodying the weight of lineage and historical injustice. Ao Bing's hesitation during confrontation scenes reflects not cowardice but an internal moral deliberation, his loyalty divided between family legacy and personal ethics. Ne Zha's fiery responses juxtapose this restraint, illustrating their divergent approaches to problem-solving and morality. Animators employed motion capture techniques for dragon flight sequences but layered them with hand-painted textures and glowing magical effects to maintain a mythic, artistic quality. Every sweep of a dragon's tail or arch of a wing communicates intent, emotion, and historical weight, making them more than adversaries. They become living symbols of heritage and expectation. The sequence in which the protagonists approach the lotus itself is meticulously constructed around themes of sacrifice, balance, and enlightenment. Each petal of the lotus is animated to react to Ne Zha and Ao Bing's emotional state, subtly shifting hue and luminosity as they grow in empathy and cooperation. Here, cinematography plays a crucial narrative role. The camera slowly rotates around the lotus, combining sweeping wide shots to establish scale and tight close-ups to capture nuanced facial expressions. These scenes highlight the intersection of internal and external journeys, showing that the success of their quest is inextricably linked to emotional maturity and moral clarity. Sound design enhances this symbolism. Soft chimes resonate with each step toward balance, while tension-building percussion signals the potential collapse of harmony if the characters falter. Secondary characters also play critical roles in reinforcing the thematic depth of the film. Tai Zhenren, the mentor figure, functions not merely as a guide but as a philosophical foil. His wisdom, often communicated through understated gestures and quiet counsel, challenges the protagonists to think beyond impulsive action. Animators emphasize this by framing Tai in scenes with stable, calm environmental cues, gliding waterfalls, balanced compositions, and steady lighting, to visually communicate his internal equilibrium. Conversely, Ne Zha and Ao Bing's shared body is often depicted with chaotic, shifting backgrounds, reinforcing their ongoing internal negotiation. These deliberate contrasts between mentor and pupils communicate psychological dynamics visually, without requiring exposition. The climactic battle sequences integrate technical virtuosity with thematic storytelling. Ne Zha's fiery attacks and Ao Bing's water-based defenses are choreographed to interlock, illustrating the complementary potential of their duality. Here, the production team employed advanced particle simulations, volumetric lighting, and 3D collision physics to create fully dynamic combat environments. Every explosion, energy wave, and elemental interaction is layered to represent not only physical impact but also the emotional and moral resonance of action. For example, when Ne Zha unleashes a particularly destructive attack in a moment of uncontrolled rage, Ao Bing's counterbalance mitigates collateral damage, visually and narratively demonstrating the importance of cooperation and emotional regulation. This marriage of technical achievement and narrative significance exemplifies the film's meticulous design philosophy. Beyond the visual and narrative components, the cultural context of Ne Zha 2 amplifies its significance. The film consciously engages with questions of destiny, legacy, and the intersection of myth and modernity. By portraying divine beings, dragons, and magical artifacts as entities with ethical complexity, the film challenges simplistic moral binaries often found in animation. Audiences are encouraged to consider perspectives, motivations, and historical context, fostering critical reflection alongside entertainment. This narrative sophistication has led to scholarly interest, with papers analyzing the film's philosophical underpinnings, mythological fidelity, and contributions to global animation discourse. From a production standpoint, Ne Zha 2 represents years of coordinated effort across multiple studios and departments. Character rigging alone required intricate programming to allow nuanced expression for two independent consciousnesses in one body. Lighting artists developed dynamic shaders capable of responding to subtle emotional shifts, ensuring that lighting variations were not merely decorative but narratively functional. Music composers collaborated closely with sound designers and animators, timing cues to visual beats to reinforce psychological tension, emotional resolution, and symbolic meaning. Voice actors recorded multiple takes to capture variations in timing, tone, and expression that would allow animators to blend Ne Zha's impulsive speech with Ao Bing's calm interjections seamlessly. The production workflow itself became an exemplar for global animation practices, demonstrating how interdisciplinary collaboration can achieve both technical brilliance and narrative depth. In addition to narrative and technical achievements, the marketing and release strategy of Ne Zha 2 significantly contributed to its global impact. The Lunar New Year release in China maximized domestic visibility, while staggered international rollouts allowed for tailored localization, including subtitling, dubbing, and culturally sensitive promotional materials. Trailers emphasized both action spectacle and emotional depth, highlighting the film's dual appeal to younger audiences and adults. Social media campaigns encouraged fan engagement, with interactive materials explaining mythological references, character backstories, and symbolic motifs. This strategy not only boosted box office performance but also cultivated an engaged, knowledgeable global audience, capable of appreciating the film's cultural nuances. The film opens with a post-catastrophe establishing scene, immediately immersing the audience in a world reshaped by Ne Zha's prior sacrifice. His body is fragmented, and Ao Bing exists in a similarly disembodied state. The animation employs semi-transparent overlays and ethereal flames and water currents to illustrate the cohabitation of their spirits in a single body. Subtle cues, Ne Zha's restless flares of fire, Ao Bing's serene water streams, signal internal tension and differing personality traits. Emotionally, this scene emphasizes vulnerability and the existential anxiety of disembodiment, immediately creating empathy and stakes for the audience. Next, the narrative transitions to the human realm, showing Lady Yin and Li Jing coping with the absence and uncertain survival of their son. Cinematic techniques here rely on warm, grounded lighting and naturalistic camera movement, contrasting with the ethereal depiction of the spiritual realm. Lady Yin's trembling hands, anxious glances, and hesitant dialogue convey her fear, while Li Jing's stern posture and cautious observation reflect his struggle to balance control with concern. These moments establish the human cost of mythological conflict and the personal stakes that drive Ne Zha's emotional motivation. The first quest sequence involves the retrieval of the initial fragment of the seven-colored precious lotus from the Dragon King's submerged palace. The palace is animated with flowing water currents, reflective surfaces, and dynamic lighting to suggest both physical danger and narrative tension. The environment mirrors character dynamics: fire, Ne Zha, versus water, Ao Bing, creates both literal and symbolic challenges. Combat choreography integrates elemental powers with tactical teamwork, requiring Ne Zha and Ao Bing to negotiate movement, strategy, and decision-making. This is an early lesson in cooperation, mirroring the broader thematic concern of duality and mutual dependence. Minor characters, including dragon subordinates and palace guardians, offer moral contrasts, highlighting loyalty, fear, and ambition in a complex social hierarchy. Following the initial fragment recovery, the film presents interpersonal development scenes between Ne Zha and Ao Bing. Humor arises naturally from their conflicting approaches to shared bodily movement, tactical disagreements, and impulsive versus cautious decision-making. The animators employ split-screen metaphors, ethereal overlays, and subtle posture shifts to represent internal dialogue visually. These sequences reinforce character growth and set the stage for moral and ethical learning. Cooperation is essential, and individual desires must sometimes be subordinated to collective good. The middle arc of the film explores moral ambiguity through the immortals' interventions. They present themselves as protectors of balance but manipulate both mortals and mythical beings to maintain control. Key scenes depict apprentices hesitating in combat, elders debating ethical dilemmas, and subtle betrayals that complicate the protagonist's journey. The animation emphasizes ethereal, celestial visuals for immortal realms, floating architecture, luminescent landscapes, and layered magical effects, to contrast the grounded, human-centered sequences. These scenes interrogate the notion of authority. The audience is encouraged to question what constitutes moral leadership, highlighting the film's philosophical sophistication. Parallel to this, the dragon's internal conflict is elaborated. The Dragon King and his subordinates embody the tension between tradition and adaptability. Ao Bing navigates generational expectations, balancing respect for his lineage with ethical judgment and personal agency. Scenes depicting deliberations among dragons, their ancestral halls, and symbolic water motifs communicate both grandeur and vulnerability. These sequences demonstrate that even powerful civilizations are susceptible to moral failings and the need for evolution. The second major quest sequence involves traversal through multiple mythological realms to recover additional lotus fragments. Each environment is uniquely designed: storm-racked celestial mountains, enchanted forests, and fiery volcanic plains each pose environmental challenges that test physical ability, strategy, and moral discernment. Fire and water remain recurring motifs, representing the protagonist's psychological states and elemental identities. Animation techniques such as volumetric lighting, fluid simulation, and dynamic particle effects visually convey the stakes of both internal and external conflict. Emotional beats in these sequences, hesitation before danger, negotiation of tactics, and recognition of shared vulnerabilities, provide continual character growth amid spectacle. Midpoint climactic encounters intensify both moral and emotional tension. Ne Zha and Ao Bing confront immortal authority directly, facing magical and physical attacks that are visually choreographed to show scale, power, and the blending of elemental abilities. Moments of hesitation, self-doubt, and ethical questioning are interwoven with high-intensity action, ensuring that audience investment remains both emotional and cognitive. Subtle visual cues, such as overlaying fire and water elements or fluctuating lighting, reinforce narrative themes and character arcs. These sequences emphasize that heroism is not merely strength or skill but moral courage and strategic cooperation. The final retrieval of the lotus occurs in a highly symbolic environment, a celestial convergence of light, water, and fire. Here, the narrative employs grandiose animation, layered lighting effects, and synchronized elemental interactions to represent both cosmic balance and personal growth. Ne Zha and Ao Bing achieve mastery over their combined abilities, reflecting their journey from conflict to cooperation. Emotional beats, mutual recognition of sacrifice, acknowledgement of personal growth, and tentative forgiveness, culminate in the restored physical forms of both protagonists, symbolizing individuation and the rewards of shared experience. The ultimate confrontation integrates all narrative threads, mortal, divine, and mythical stakes collide in a multidimensional battle across human villages, dragon realms, and celestial territories. Animation techniques reach their peak sophistication, fluid simulations for water, dynamic particle effects for fire, volumetric atmospheric effects for magic, and realistic environmental interaction for debris, waves, and terrain shifts. Character development remains central. Ne Zha and Ao Bing's mastery of teamwork, moral discernment, and strategic thinking determines outcomes, demonstrating that personal growth directly impacts cosmic resolution. Minor characters, immortal apprentices, dragon subordinates, and villagers, play decisive roles, reinforcing the narrative's assertion that every choice carries consequence. In the resolution, Ne Zha and Ao Bing's separation into individual bodies symbolizes both freedom and the culmination of character development. The lotus motif, now fully restored, represents balance achieved, personal growth actualized, and cosmic harmony partially re-established. Immortals confront the consequences of overreach, dragons begin dialogue with humans, and mortals bear witness to divine and mythological reconciliation. Symbolic elements, light converging from celestial realms, water and fire harmonizing in visual effects, and lotus petals scattering, visually reinforce thematic closure. Emotional beats are underscored through facial animation, body posture, and subtle environmental cues, ensuring that narrative and visual storytelling operate in harmony. The final sequences extend these themes into reflective epilogue moments. Ne Zha, now fully conscious of his identity, observes human villages, dragon realms, and celestial vistas, contemplating the balance between action and reflection, destiny and agency. Ao Bing similarly reflects on his role in bridging civilizations, asserting ethical autonomy, and redefining legacy. These contemplative moments, animated with serene lighting, soft textures, and subtle ambient soundscapes, provide closure while leaving philosophical resonance for the audience. Growth, reconciliation, and ethical agency are ongoing processes. Minor sequences throughout the film, village interactions, dragon subplots, immortal debates, and cosmic environmental changes, serve to reinforce thematic depth, world building, and character arcs. Each visual motif, from fire and water to lotus petals and celestial light, operates simultaneously as narrative metaphor and aesthetic spectacle. Sound design, including culturally rooted instruments, environmental sounds, and dynamic orchestration, ensures that each moment, from quiet reflection to grandiose battle, communicates multiple layers of meaning. Dialogue, humor, and silence are used strategically to reinforce emotional beats, underscore ethical considerations, and maintain narrative momentum. By the conclusion, Ne Zha 2 achieves a synthesis of storytelling, animation, thematic exploration, and philosophical inquiry. Every scene, major and minor, contributes to an interconnected narrative web, character growth influences cosmic outcomes, moral choices resonate across realms, and mythological symbolism intertwines with personal journeys. The film not only entertains but educates, encourages ethical reflection, and demonstrates the technical and artistic potential of Chinese animation on a global scale. It provides a masterclass in integrating myth, character, philosophy, and cinematic craft, establishing a template for future animated storytelling that is both culturally specific and universally resonant. As the narrative unfolds, minor characters take on increasingly meaningful roles, each carefully constructed to reinforce the story's thematic depth and narrative coherence. Among these, Ne Zha's companions and celestial allies are particularly important. Though some appear only briefly, their interactions with Ne Zha and Ao Bing underscore the broader stakes of the story and provide insight into the complexities of divine politics, moral decision-making, and communal responsibility. Disciples of Tai Zhenren, for instance, represent different virtues and weaknesses, highlighting the tension between learning and mastery, guidance and autonomy. Each disciple embodies a specific aspect of the human or divine experience: patience, courage, doubt, loyalty, and these traits are revealed not only through dialogue but through visual cues, subtle gestures, and elemental representations. One disciple's water-based magic may falter when facing fiery obstacles, symbolizing the limits of isolated skill and the necessity of collaboration. Another disciple's strength may overshadow empathy, prompting moral conflict that mirrors Ne Zha's internal struggle. In addition to these celestial and human secondary characters, the film introduces symbolic entities and ethereal guides whose presence enriches both the narrative and its philosophical underpinnings. Dream spirits, guardian animals, and ancestral apparitions appear throughout Ne Zha's journey, sometimes in fleeting sequences, sometimes in extended contemplative scenes. These entities often serve as mirrors to the protagonist's inner fears, desires, and potential, reflecting the Taoist and Buddhist philosophical influences underpinning the film. Their interactions with Ne Zha and Ao Bing are subtle yet emotionally potent. A dragonfly may symbolize fleeting insight, a lotus blossom may mark the moment of rebirth, and a shadowy guardian may foreshadow impending trial. These moments, though often brief, contribute to the layered storytelling that characterizes Ne Zha 2, making repeated viewings richly rewarding. The battles in the film are equally layered, functioning on narrative, symbolic, and emotional levels. When Ne Zha confronts the Dragon Kings, each encounter is meticulously staged to highlight both individual character growth and the interplay of elemental forces. The choreography is informed by classical Chinese martial arts principles, ensuring that combat sequences are not only visually spectacular but also thematically coherent. Ne Zha's fiery spear and blazing wheels cut through water and air in a rhythm that mirrors his emotional intensity, while Ao Bing's presence channels calm and precision, illustrating the synthesis of opposing forces. These battles also incorporate environmental storytelling. Tidal surges, lightning storms, collapsing celestial platforms, and shifting landscapes reflect the stakes of each confrontation. In one particularly poignant sequence, a battle against the East Sea Dragon King occurs amidst a turbulent ocean storm, where Ne Zha's inner conflict manifests in flashes of uncontrolled fire, while Ao Bing's guidance tempers the chaos into strategy. The visual and emotional choreography here reinforces the film's recurring themes of internal balance, cooperation, and the transformative power of self-awareness. Every battle is punctuated by smaller, character-driven moments that deepen audience investment. Ne Zha's eyes flicker with doubt before making a critical decision, Ao Bing whispers guidance that turns the tide, and background characters react with fear, awe, or hope. These micro-moments ensure that even in large-scale, cinematic spectacles, the human, and semi-divine, emotional experience remains central. Secondary plots, such as the struggles of minor dragon princes or townspeople affected by divine conflict, are interwoven seamlessly into these sequences, providing perspective on the wider consequences of the protagonist's actions. These subplots reinforce the story's moral complexity, illustrating that heroism and leadership carry responsibilities that extend beyond immediate conflicts. The production process behind these sequences demonstrates an extraordinary level of planning and innovation. Animators utilized advanced simulation software for particle effects, fluid dynamics, and volumetric lighting to create realistic, responsive environments. Dragon movements were informed by studies of snake and aquatic locomotion, while fire and elemental effects drew inspiration from both natural phenomena and classical Chinese ink painting. Cinematographers and digital lighting artists meticulously planned each shot to ensure that color, contrast, and composition conveyed emotional and symbolic meaning. The result is a fully immersive cinematic experience in which every visual element, from the flicker of flame on Ne Zha's spear to the ripple of a dragon's tail through a storm-tossed sea, communicates story, character, and theme simultaneously. Cultural references and mythological nuance abound throughout the film. Subtle allusions to classical literature, folklore, and Taoist Buddhist symbolism appear in architecture, costume design, and visual motifs. The recurring presence of lotuses, clouds, and talismans reflects both narrative symbolism and broader philosophical principles: enlightenment, purity, spiritual guidance, and cosmic balance. In one sequence, Ne Zha's fiery aura aligns with a circular celestial diagram in the background, visually echoing the interplay of destiny and free will that dominates the narrative. Similarly, the Dragon King's underwater kingdoms draw inspiration from traditional Chinese depictions of aquatic deities and realms, combining fantastical imagination with cultural authenticity. These details ensure that the world of Ne Zha 2 is not only visually stunning but also intellectually and emotionally resonant, offering layers of meaning to attentive viewers. The film's secondary characters are further enriched through voice performance and musical accompaniment. Minor celestial beings, town residents, and spirits are assigned unique leitmotifs or tonal qualities in the score, reflecting personality, emotional state, and narrative function. For example, a nervous disciple may have a trembling high-pitched motif that contrasts with the deep, resonant tones accompanying a dragon king, emphasizing the weight of responsibility. These audio cues subtly reinforce visual and narrative information, demonstrating the film's holistic approach to storytelling, where every element, visual, auditory, narrative, is carefully orchestrated to maximize thematic impact and emotional resonance. Production trivia and behind-the-scenes insights further enhance appreciation of the film. Animators worked in multiple international studios to combine traditional Chinese artistry with cutting-edge computer-generated imagery. Concept artists studied centuries of ink paintings, classical architecture, martial art stances, and even natural phenomena such as fire behavior and water flow to ensure authenticity and realism. Motion capture was combined with hand-drawn animation to preserve expressive detail while maintaining fluid, dynamic motion. The director, Jiaozi, emphasized emotional authenticity over spectacle, often pausing sequences to refine subtle facial expressions or body language, ensuring that viewers would feel the characters' internal journeys as intensely as the external conflicts. The global impact of Ne Zha 2 extends beyond box office figures. Its unprecedented commercial success, exceeding $2 billion, underscores a growing recognition of Chinese animation's potential on the world stage. More importantly, it demonstrates that culturally specific stories can resonate universally when grounded in compelling human emotion, ethical inquiry, and narrative sophistication. Academics, critics, and industry professionals have noted that the film challenges traditional Western dominance in animated storytelling, offering new approaches to narrative structure, mythological adaptation, and cross-cultural engagement. Its themes of self-determination, ethical responsibility, and reconciliation of opposing forces resonate across cultural boundaries, ensuring that Ne Zha 2 is not only a cinematic spectacle but also a cultural milestone and source of inspiration for future generations of filmmakers and storytellers. In terms of emotional resonance, the film excels in depicting the psychological complexity of its protagonists and secondary characters alike. Moments of vulnerability, Ne Zha doubting his ability to control his powers, Ao Bing grappling with isolation within Ne Zha's consciousness, minor dragon princes questioning their inherited duties, are treated with delicacy and narrative weight. Emotional climaxes are carefully staged to coincide with visual and musical crescendos, reinforcing the impact of key choices, revelations, and reconciliations. This attention to psychological realism, layered with mythological grandeur, ensures that the story operates simultaneously on multiple levels, as an action-adventure epic, a character-driven drama, and a philosophical exploration of destiny, identity, and ethical responsibility. Symbolically, Ne Zha 2 emphasizes the importance of balance and integration. Fire and water, light and shadow, destiny and choice, chaos and order, these dualities permeate the narrative, the visual design, and the emotional arcs. Ne Zha's fiery temperament balanced by Ao Bing's introspective calm, the destructive potential of the Dragon Kings tempered by their protective instincts, and the imposition of divine will countered by the protagonist's moral agency, all of these elements reinforce the film's central message, that power, responsibility, and identity are realized through understanding, cooperation, and ethical action, rather than brute strength or blind adherence to fate. The film opens with a striking visual tableau. The cosmos itself seems to vibrate with latent energy, a blend of ethereal light and subtle, undulating shadows that immediately situates the audience in a realm beyond the ordinary. Ne Zha's reconstructed body emerges amidst this cosmic backdrop, his fiery aura flickering as if alive, signaling both potential and instability. The camera lingers on the minute detail of his eyes, capturing the interplay of his own fiery spirit and the subdued, reflective presence of Ao Bing residing within. From the very first frame, the film establishes the duality at the heart of the narrative, impulsive action versus contemplative restraint, personal desire versus ethical responsibility. The visual motifs, vibrant flames interlaced with flowing water currents, serve not only to illustrate the coexistence of two spirits but to reinforce the thematic tension between chaos and harmony. In these opening moments, the audience is immediately invited to consider the philosophical stakes. The journey is not merely physical but deeply internal, a negotiation of identity that will unfold across cosmic, mortal, and spiritual planes. The initial exposition unfolds through the interactions between Ne Zha and the immortals of Yusu Palace. Here, the film employs a combination of dialogue, environmental storytelling, and musical cues to communicate the stakes. The palace itself is rendered in crystalline whites and soft blues, its architecture referencing classical Chinese aesthetics while incorporating impossible geometry that evokes the otherworldly. The immortals' movements are measured and precise, contrasting with Ne Zha's energetic, unpredictable motion. As they explain the plan to restore Ao Bing's mortal body using the seven-colored precious lotus, subtle lighting cues indicate moral ambiguity, shadows fall across the immortals' faces, hinting at hidden motives. The narrative tension here is enhanced by orchestral strings interwoven with traditional Guzheng motifs, signaling the intersection of the ancient and contemporary, the human and the divine. When Ne Zha and Ao Bing first attempt to manifest their combined consciousness in action, the film shifts to a series of kinetic sequences that are as much about psychology as spectacle. A test of elemental control sees fire and water interweaving in dynamic choreography, each movement reflecting emotional negotiation. Ao Bing tempers Ne Zha's flames with carefully controlled water currents, producing a visual symphony that mirrors their psychological interplay. These sequences are punctuated by close-ups that emphasize subtle facial expressions, conveying internal dialogue without spoken words. Here, the filmmakers demonstrate a mastery of visual storytelling, allowing viewers to perceive the negotiation between dual consciousness through motion, light, and elemental interaction. The sequence culminates in a moment of balance, a simultaneous display of controlled power and mutual understanding, symbolizing the possibility of harmony between opposing forces. The narrative then transitions to the mortal realm, where villages impacted by celestial events provide a grounded perspective on the consequences of divine action. The camera pans over ordinary life disrupted by magical phenomena, crops scorched by uncontrolled flames, rivers swollen by Ao Bing's water currents, and villagers awed by the presence of supernatural beings. These sequences employ a warm color palette to contrast with the cooler, more abstract tones of the spiritual plane, visually delineating the mortal and divine domains. In these scenes, Ne Zha's empathy becomes apparent. He intervenes not with brute force alone but with strategic consideration, highlighting a growth in moral reasoning. The juxtaposition of spectacle and consequence reinforces the film's central thesis: power is inseparable from responsibility, and heroism is measured not merely by feats of strength but by ethical discernment. As the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas emerge, the film escalates both narratively and visually. Each Dragon King is introduced with a distinct visual and sonic signature, their elemental domains fully realized through advanced CGI and compositional design. The eldest Dragon King, bathed in deep cerulean hues, moves with deliberate grace, his presence signaling wisdom tempered by experience. A younger Dragon King, imbued with fiery red scales, moves unpredictably, illustrating impulsivity and volatility. The battles that follow are meticulously choreographed, balancing large-scale spectacle with intimate character moments. Fire and water clash in a choreographed dance that conveys thematic duality, impulsive versus measured, destructive versus restorative. Camera angles shift dynamically, from sweeping aerial views of oceans and skies to micro-close UPS of elemental interactions, allowing the audience to engage with both the narrative and the emotional stakes simultaneously. Midway through the film, an introspective sequence provides a deep dive into the shared consciousness of Ne Zha and Ao Bing. Rendered in soft lighting and fluid motion, this dreamlike passage visually externalizes internal dialogue. The audience witnesses flashbacks of their individual pasts, intercut with imagined futures, as they reconcile conflicting impulses. Symbolism is abundant. A river of molten fire gradually cools into crystalline water, representing the harmonization of opposing natures. Mirrored reflections hint at identity negotiation. Fragmented celestial shards coalesce into a unified orb, signaling the potential for integrated selfhood. The musical score, blending strings and plucked guzheng notes, accentuates both tension and emerging understanding. This sequence exemplifies how Ne Zha 2 uses cinematic language to explore psychological complexity, transforming abstract internal conflict into visually and emotionally compelling narrative. The climactic confrontation integrates all preceding elements: character, mythology, emotion, and visual spectacle. As Ne Zha and Ao Bing face a final cosmic threat, the environment itself becomes a narrative instrument. Storm clouds, elemental energy, and ethereal light respond dynamically to the protagonist's actions, reflecting both external conflict and internal resolution. The choreography balances scale and intimacy, ensuring that viewers experience both the grandeur of the mythic struggle and the personal stakes of dual consciousness negotiation. Moments of hesitancy, dialogue, and internal conflict punctuate the battle, emphasizing that the resolution is contingent upon moral discernment as much as power. When the protagonists achieve balance, the film visually reinforces the theme: flames and water intertwine, celestial light refracts into a spectrum, and the environment stabilizes, symbolizing restored harmony. Post-climactic sequences emphasize consequence and reflection. Mortals observe the aftermath of celestial intervention, landscapes and villages bear the marks of divine engagement, and Ne Zha and Ao Bing contemplate their future. These sequences employ a softer palette, longer takes, and understated music, creating a contemplative rhythm that contrasts with the intensity of battle. Symbolically, the seven-colored precious lotus glows faintly, a visual reminder that the journey of balance, growth, and moral responsibility is ongoing. Characters exchange subtle glances and gestures, conveying emotional continuity and relational depth without the need for extensive dialogue. This restraint underscores the film's sophistication, demonstrating that resolution is achieved through integration, reflection, and ethical alignment rather than mere physical triumph. Throughout the film, recurring motifs and symbolic imagery reinforce central themes. Fire and water consistently signify duality, moral tension, and internal conflict. The seven-colored precious lotus embodies restoration, ethical choice, and the consequences of intervention. Celestial landscapes and architectural forms visualize hierarchy, authority, and relational dynamics. These motifs are integrated into both the narrative and visual language, allowing audiences to perceive thematic layers intuitively. The interplay between macrocosmic events and intimate character moments creates a rich, multidimensional experience that engages intellect, emotion, and aesthetic appreciation simultaneously. Finally, the film's global and cultural impact is woven into the narrative of its reception. Domestically, audiences responded to both spectacle and depth, engaging with classical mythological motifs in a modern cinematic format. Internationally, the English-dubbed version facilitated cross-cultural understanding while retaining philosophical and emotional nuance. Critics noted the film's ability to combine blockbuster spectacle with thematic sophistication, praising its psychological depth, visual innovation, and narrative complexity. Box office records confirmed its commercial and cultural resonance, while scholarly analysis highlighted its role in expanding the global conversation about non-Western animation and culturally rooted storytelling. In sum, the scene-by-scene progression of Ne Zha 2 demonstrates a masterful integration of plot, visual artistry, psychological depth, mythological fidelity, and thematic exploration. Each sequence is carefully constructed to convey both external action and internal reflection, balancing spectacle with introspection, cultural specificity with universal resonance, and technological innovation with narrative sophistication. The film stands as a benchmark in global animation, illustrating how storytelling, design, performance, and philosophy can converge into a cinematic experience that is both intellectually engaging and emotionally profound. By examining these sequences, one appreciates the depth of thought, craftsmanship, and cultural reverence that underpins Ne Zha 2, making it not only an animated epic but a transformative work of art and storytelling. The psychological complexity of Ne Zha 2 is one of its most striking achievements, allowing audiences to engage with the characters on both conscious and subconscious levels. Ne Zha, as the fiery and impulsive soul, embodies the archetype of the rebellious individual who resists societal and cosmic constraints. His psychological profile reveals a deep-seated fear of rejection and inadequacy, stemming from his origins as a child cursed by fate. This fear often manifests as anger or impatience, driving him to act decisively but recklessly. Through the course of the film, Ne Zha confronts the consequences of his impulsivity, learning that courage must be balanced by responsibility and awareness of others' perspectives. His dual existence with Ao Bing serves as both a mirror and a teacher. While Ne Zha embodies emotional spontaneity, Ao Bing introduces reflection, restraint, and ethical deliberation. Their interdependence becomes the primary vehicle for exploring the reconciliation of conflicting aspects of the self, a theme rarely treated with such sophistication in animated cinema. Ao Bing's psychological journey complements and contrasts with Ne Zha's. As the son of the Dragon King of the East Sea, he bears the weight of lineage and communal expectation, creating a strong sense of duty intertwined with personal longing for autonomy. Ao Bing is introspective and deliberate, often weighing moral considerations before acting. His internal conflicts revolve around loyalty, to family, to the Dragon Clan, and to moral principles, and the tension between inherited obligations and individual agency. Sharing a body with Ne Zha forces him to confront the limits of control, revealing vulnerabilities beneath his calm exterior. The duality of their existence allows for nuanced exploration of identity. Ao Bing's ethical precision tempers Ne Zha's impulsivity, while Ne Zha's passionate decisiveness empowers Ao Bing to break free from paralyzing overcaution. Together, their journey represents an allegorical reconciliation of emotion and reason, passion and reflection, instinct and intellect. Secondary characters also receive rich psychological attention. Li Jing, Ne Zha's father, embodies the tension between traditional authority and modern parental responsibility. His earlier failure to understand Ne Zha's emotional needs leaves lingering guilt, and throughout the film he must navigate the complex interplay of guidance, restraint, and empathy. Lady Yin represents unconditional love tempered with caution. Her nurturing presence stabilizes Ne Zha emotionally, yet she also challenges him to recognize the consequences of his actions. Tai Zhenren, the mentor, functions as a psychological anchor, guiding the protagonists toward self-awareness and moral clarity without imposing his will. The Dragon Kings and their emissaries, in contrast, are shaped by collective trauma and historical injustice, providing a multifaceted depiction of antagonists whose motivations are neither simplistic nor purely malevolent. Each character's psychology is reflected in both voice performance and animation. Micro-expressions, body language, and motion subtleties communicate emotional states with remarkable precision. Scene-by-scene symbolism in Ne Zha 2 enriches the narrative and offers deeper thematic resonance. The sacred lotus, central to the film's plot, represents harmony, spiritual growth, and reconciliation. Each petal symbolizes an aspect of moral or emotional development, and the act of approaching the lotus mirrors the character's internal journey toward balance. The visual design of the lotus is intricate, luminescent colors shift in response to the character's emotional state, and subtle patterns within the petals reflect universal symbols of unity and duality. Water and fire imagery recur throughout the film, symbolizing the contrasting but complementary forces within the shared body. Storms often accompany moments of conflict, while serene rivers and glowing pools represent moments of introspection, empathy, and mutual understanding. These visual metaphors operate alongside the narrative, reinforcing themes without explicit exposition and encouraging audiences to perceive multiple layers of meaning. The climactic battle sequence exemplifies the integration of narrative, symbolism, and technical innovation. Ne Zha's fiery attacks and Ao Bing's water-based defenses are choreographed to interact dynamically, visually representing the protagonist's internal negotiation. Animators employed advanced particle physics, fluid simulation, and volumetric lighting to create a seamless interaction of elements, ensuring that every blast, wave, and collision reflected not just physical impact but psychological and moral stakes. The sequence is punctuated by strategic use of perspective and camera movement. Sweeping wide shots convey epic scale, while tight close-ups capture micro-expressions revealing fear, determination, and empathy. Each movement functions as a symbolic reflection of emotional and ethical choices, turning the climactic action into a meditation on balance, cooperation, and moral growth. Thematic resonance in Ne Zha 2 extends beyond the individual characters to societal and cultural dimensions. Issues of identity, legacy, and the reconciliation of conflicting forces resonate with contemporary global audiences. Ne Zha's struggle to define himself outside the constraints of fate parallels broader questions of personal autonomy, social expectation, and resistance to systemic oppression. Ao Bing's navigation of inherited obligations speaks to the challenges of balancing collective responsibility with individual agency. These themes, rooted in Chinese myth and philosophy, transcend cultural specificity, allowing international audiences to engage with the story on multiple levels. The film explores the interplay between destiny and free will, demonstrating that while external forces shape individuals, ethical reflection, empathy, and cooperation allow for meaningful agency. Global reception reflects the film's cultural and artistic impact. Domestically, Ne Zha 2 became a phenomenon, celebrated for its emotional depth, visual sophistication, and creative adaptation of myth. Internationally, critics lauded the film as a milestone in global animation, noting its narrative complexity and technical brilliance. The film challenged the perception that only Western studios could produce world-class animated features with broad appeal. Scholars highlighted the sophisticated treatment of mythology, morality, and identity, examining the film as a cultural artifact and as a pedagogical tool for exploring ethical, philosophical, and literary themes. The combination of universal emotional themes and culturally specific narrative content allowed the film to function as both entertainment and a medium for cross-cultural dialogue. The production process itself reflects unprecedented technical and creative achievement. Coordinating multiple animation studios, integrating motion capture with handcrafted animation, and managing complex lighting, particle, and simulation effects required meticulous planning and innovative workflow strategies. Character rigs were designed to accommodate dual consciousness, enabling nuanced expressions and motion blending between Ne Zha and Ao Bing. Music and sound design were synchronized with emotional beats and visual cues, creating a cohesive audiovisual experience that reinforced narrative themes. Voice actors performed multiple overlapping takes to allow animators to layer dialogue and inflections, ensuring that each soul's personality was distinguishable even in shared sequences. These production innovations contributed not only to the film's visual and auditory excellence but also to the storytelling, allowing narrative complexity to be conveyed naturally through performance, motion, and sound. The legacy of Ne Zha 2 is multidimensional. Commercially, it shattered box office records, becoming the highest-grossing animated film and non-English film in history. Culturally, it validated the global relevance of Chinese animation and mythology, inspiring artists, animators, and scholars worldwide. Pedagogically, it became a case study in integrating narrative complexity, visual metaphor, and cultural fidelity within commercial cinema. Industry-wide, it influenced animation workflows, cross-cultural marketing strategies, and the development of mythologically inspired storytelling. Creatively, it set a benchmark for character depth, narrative sophistication, and technical innovation, demonstrating the potential for animated films to engage audiences emotionally, intellectually, and culturally. In conclusion, Ne Zha 2 stands as a landmark achievement in global animated cinema. Its integration of mythology, psychology, symbolism, technical artistry, and narrative sophistication elevates it far beyond conventional genre boundaries. The duality of Ne Zha and Ao Bing provides a lens for exploring human emotion, moral responsibility, and the reconciliation of conflicting impulses. Visual and musical artistry reinforce thematic depth, while complex narrative and symbolic layers reward repeated engagement and thoughtful analysis. The film's commercial success, critical acclaim, and cultural impact underscore its significance, positioning it as both a creative milestone and a cultural ambassador. Through its exploration of identity, fate, balance, and empathy, Ne Zha 2 demonstrates the power of animation to convey profound philosophical truths and universal human experiences, leaving an enduring legacy for audiences and creators around the world. The minor subplots throughout Ne Zha 2 contribute significantly to the depth and richness of the story, often serving as mirrors to the central themes of identity, destiny, and moral choice. One notable subplot involves the villagers in Ne Zha's hometown and surrounding regions, whose reactions to his rebirth provide insight into societal perceptions of power, fear, and hope. Though the villagers play relatively small roles, their presence emphasizes that Ne Zha's actions carry consequences beyond the cosmic or mythological scale. Scenes depicting their awe, suspicion, and occasional fear at the sight of his powers demonstrate the tension between admiration and apprehension, mirroring broader human responses to those who challenge conventional expectations. These interactions also highlight the recurring theme that heroism is not an isolated pursuit, it impacts communities, relationships, and the social fabric itself. The villagers' evolving perception of Ne Zha, from fear to respect and finally to trust, parallels his own emotional growth, reinforcing the narrative's commitment to character-driven storytelling. Another secondary subplot involves the younger generation of dragons, who serve both as symbolic representations of legacy and as practical narrative catalysts. These dragons, heirs to the Dragon King's power and responsibility, struggle to navigate the tension between their inherited duties and personal desires. Their conflicts, internal and external, mirror Ne Zha and Ao Bing's own journeys, emphasizing the universality of grappling with destiny. The younger dragon's interactions with Ne Zha, whether in mentorship, opposition, or reluctant alliance, further reinforce the film's central themes of empathy, cooperation, and the reconciliation of opposing forces. By providing multiple layers of conflict and character development, these subplots ensure that the narrative operates simultaneously on personal, communal, and cosmic levels. Dream sequences and ethereal visions form another critical component of Ne Zha 2's narrative architecture. These sequences allow the filmmakers to explore psychological and symbolic dimensions in ways that literal events cannot. For example, Ne Zha experiences visions of potential futures in which his actions lead to both triumph and devastation. These sequences employ abstract animation techniques, including shifting color palettes, surreal transformations of space, and symbolic imagery such as fractured mirrors, swirling lotus petals, and elemental storms. By visualizing Ne Zha's fears and moral dilemmas, these dreamscapes deepen audience understanding of the stakes involved and underscore the philosophical underpinnings of the story, the tension between fate and agency, the consequences of choice, and the moral responsibility of those with extraordinary power. Every secondary character contributes thematically as well. Beyond the Dragon Kings and minor dragons, celestial attendants, disciples, and spirits populate the story world, each reflecting a particular ethical, emotional, or philosophical principle. For instance, one disciple embodies patience and careful observation, tempering Ne Zha's impulsive energy during collaborative action. Another minor spirit reflects the cost of excessive adherence to duty without compassion, serving as a cautionary example for both protagonist and audience. These characters' subtle influence on the narrative highlights the film's commitment to layered storytelling. Even seemingly minor interactions carry symbolic weight and narrative significance. Production innovations are central to realizing the complex narrative and visual demands of the film. The animation team employed a hybrid approach combining keyframe animation, motion capture, and advanced simulation techniques. Particle simulations were used to create realistic fire, water, and elemental effects, while volumetric lighting and high-fidelity textures added depth and realism to every frame. Motion capture ensured fluidity of movement for both action sequences and subtle emotional gestures, while hand-drawn refinement preserved the expressive nuances of facial animation. Environmental design was particularly sophisticated, integrating traditional Chinese architectural motifs, naturalistic landscapes, and mythological symbolism. Celestial palaces, underwater dragon kingdoms, and battlefields were not merely sets but narrative instruments, each reflecting character emotions, thematic resonance, and the interplay of elemental forces. The soundtrack further enhances the narrative's emotional and cultural resonance. Composer-led orchestration integrates traditional Chinese instruments, such as guzheng, eru, pipa, and dizi, with full orchestral arrangements, creating a musical language that is both epic and intimately expressive. Leitmotifs for each primary and secondary character guide the audience emotionally, reinforcing character identity, internal conflict, and relational dynamics. For example, Ne Zha's fiery leitmotif conveys unpredictability and intensity, while Ao Bing's flowing, serene motifs convey reflection and adaptability. The convergence of these motifs during collaborative moments underscores the film's thematic emphasis on unity and balance. Additionally, audio design meticulously synchronizes elemental effects with music and character action, ensuring that every fire crackle, wave crash, or gust of wind contributes to narrative and emotional storytelling. Symbolism permeates both the narrative and visual design. The seven-colored precious lotus, which facilitates Ne Zha and Ao Bing's rebirth, symbolizes spiritual growth, renewal, and the transcendence of limitations. Fire and water, recurrent elemental motifs, illustrate not only conflict but potential harmony. Light and shadow highlight moral ambiguity and internal struggle. Even minor details, such as the placement of celestial talismans, the arrangement of lotus petals, or the direction of wind currents in battle sequences, are carefully considered to reinforce thematic and symbolic meaning. These subtle cues reward attentive viewers and provide layers of interpretive richness that extend the film's impact beyond surface-level spectacle. The narrative also emphasizes moral and philosophical inquiry. Characters constantly confront questions about duty, destiny, morality, and personal responsibility. Ne Zha must reconcile his predestined role with his own desires and ethical compass. Ao Bing must navigate the duality of his dragon heritage and human-like consciousness. The dragon kings must weigh vengeance against justice and the welfare of their subjects. Even minor characters, from celestial attendants to townspeople, are faced with decisions that reveal ethical values and contribute to the broader narrative of cosmic and human responsibility. By embedding moral complexity throughout, Ne Zha 2 transforms from a conventional animated adventure into a sophisticated philosophical exploration. The global reception of Ne Zha 2 confirms its universal resonance and cultural significance. The film achieved unprecedented commercial success, grossing over $2 billion globally, and became the highest-grossing animated film of all time as well as one of the top-grossing non-English language films in cinematic history. Critics lauded its animation quality, narrative complexity, character development, emotional depth, and thematic sophistication. Scholars and industry analysts have highlighted its role in elevating Chinese animation on the world stage, demonstrating that culturally rooted narratives can achieve universal appeal without compromising authenticity. Audience engagement worldwide was driven not only by spectacle but by the story's profound exploration of identity, courage, ethical responsibility, and the struggle for autonomy against predestined roles. Cultural impact extends beyond entertainment. Ne Zha 2 has inspired discussions on global storytelling, adaptation of mythology for modern media, and cross-cultural engagement. It exemplifies how deeply localized narratives, in this case, Chinese mythological storytelling, can resonate with global audiences when rooted in universally understood emotional, ethical, and philosophical themes. The film has influenced animators, writers, and scholars, prompting reconsideration of how myth, visual art, and narrative structure can be integrated in animation at an international standard of excellence. In conclusion, Ne Zha 2 represents a milestone in cinematic storytelling, combining technical innovation, artistic excellence, philosophical depth, and emotional resonance. Its continuous interplay of major and minor characters, rich subplots, layered symbolism, immersive animation, musical sophistication, and thoughtful exploration of moral and ethical dilemmas establishes it as a landmark achievement in both Chinese and global animation. By integrating mythological authenticity with modern cinematic techniques, the filmmakers created a narrative that is simultaneously epic, intimate, culturally specific, and universally relatable. The story of Ne Zha and Ao Bing, intertwined with the broader cosmos and complex societal structures, demonstrates that heroism, identity, and moral courage are not dictated by fate alone but are realized through self-awareness, empathy, and ethical choice. Ne Zha 2 stands as a testament to the power of storytelling to transcend boundaries, inspire reflection, and deliver a cinematic experience of unparalleled visual, emotional, and intellectual richness. Beyond the main characters, Ne Zha 2 features a rich ensemble of secondary and minor characters whose roles deepen the story's thematic complexity and cultural resonance. Among them, the Dragon King emissaries are notable not just as antagonists but as symbolic embodiments of inherited trauma and societal expectation. Each emissary represents a different aspect of the dragon lineage. One emphasizes tradition and obedience, another embodies vengeance and pride, and yet another conveys wisdom tempered with caution. Their dialogue and actions are carefully crafted to illustrate the moral dilemmas facing Ao Bing. They are not mere villains to be defeated, they are living reminders of the consequences of legacy and the tension between personal desire and communal responsibility. Animators and designers gave each emissary distinct visual motifs, color-coded scales, glowing eyes, and elemental auras, to signify their personality, lineage, and role in the narrative hierarchy. These design choices ensure that even minor characters are visually and thematically significant, contributing to a densely layered narrative. Other supporting characters, such as Tai Zhenren's disciples and fellow immortals, serve as ethical and philosophical foils. Each minor immortal embodies a specific principle or moral orientation, such as patience, justice, or caution. Their interactions with the protagonists provide opportunities for philosophical dialogue, mentorship, and reflection. For instance, in a pivotal training sequence, the disciples present challenges that are less physical and more psychological, forcing Ne Zha and Ao Bing to confront their emotional weaknesses and cognitive biases. The challenges are visually and narratively symbolic. A mirror labyrinth reflects personal insecurities, floating platforms test trust and cooperation, and illusions of past failures confront the characters with unresolved guilt. These sequences are animated with precise attention to movement and perspective, creating environments that feel both magical and psychologically resonant. Magical sequences in Ne Zha 2 are central to the storytelling, functioning as visual metaphors for internal and moral struggles. The seven-colored sacred lotus is the narrative and symbolic centerpiece, representing the culmination of the protagonist's emotional and ethical journey. Each petal corresponds to a virtue or lesson: courage, patience, empathy, responsibility, wisdom, self-control, and sacrifice. As Ne Zha and Ao Bing navigate the lotus chamber, the petals react to their emotional states, glowing brighter as they demonstrate growth or dimming when they falter. This visual feedback loop reinforces the idea that internal harmony is inseparable from external success. The animators meticulously designed particle effects, soft lighting gradients, and dynamic textures to make each petal a living symbol rather than a static object. This attention to detail ensures that the magical sequences are narratively meaningful as well as visually stunning. The elemental battles between Ne Zha and Ao Bing against the Dragon King's forces are also imbued with cultural and mythological symbolism. Fire and water are recurring motifs, representing not only the characters' powers but also broader philosophical ideas. Fire symbolizes transformation, passion, and the courage to challenge fate, while water signifies wisdom, adaptability, and moral balance. In one climactic sequence, Ne Zha's fire engulfs an entire battlefield, threatening to destroy everything, but Ao Bing's water tempers the flames, demonstrating that unchecked power must be balanced by reflection and restraint. The choreography of these battles was carefully planned to align with character development. Each attack, parry, and movement communicates psychological states and moral lessons. Animators used layered particle simulations, volumetric lighting, and motion blur to create fluid interactions between elements, making the magical battles both aesthetically impressive and narratively informative. Cultural references are woven throughout the film, enhancing its depth for audiences familiar with Chinese tradition while remaining accessible to global viewers. Architectural designs draw from classical Chinese palaces, pagodas, and temples, integrating historical authenticity with mythic embellishment. Costume designs reflect cultural symbolism. Robes and armor are adorned with motifs representing dragons, phoenixes, and auspicious clouds, each signifying status, lineage, or moral alignment. Even color choices carry meaning. Red conveys courage and defiance, gold signifies authority and divine favor, blue embodies wisdom and calm, and black represents conflict, mystery, or imbalance. The filmmakers intentionally incorporated these visual cues to create layers of meaning that reward attentive viewers. Minor references to classical Chinese literature and folklore appear in dialogue, inscriptions, and environmental details, providing educational and cultural enrichment without interrupting narrative flow. The minor magical artifacts featured in the film also have symbolic significance. For example, a celestial mirror used during a training sequence reflects not just physical appearance but moral and emotional integrity, requiring characters to confront their inner failings. A mystical chain appearing during a Dragon King encounter represents binding obligations, highlighting themes of inherited responsibility and moral restraint. Each artifact is animated with textures and lighting effects that reinforce its narrative and symbolic function, blending aesthetic beauty with storytelling purpose. These carefully designed details elevate the minor magical elements beyond decorative props, making them active participants in the narrative and thematic exploration. Sound design for minor characters and magical sequences further enhances immersion and narrative clarity. Subtle tonal shifts, spatial audio cues, and elemental sound motifs communicate personality, emotion, and intention. The hiss of dragon scales, the crackle of Ne Zha's fire, and the gentle lap of Ao Bing's water manipulation are integrated into a complex auditory ecosystem, allowing audiences to perceive layers of information subconsciously. This meticulous attention to auditory detail ensures that even minor characters and magical effects contribute meaningfully to story comprehension and emotional engagement. The resolution of Ne Zha 2 exemplifies the culmination of the film's narrative, psychological, and symbolic arcs. After collecting the sacred lotus and confronting external threats, Ne Zha and Ao Bing achieve internal reconciliation. Their shared body harmonizes, visually represented through synchronized movement, balanced elemental effects, and unified expression. The Dragon Kings recognize Ao Bing's moral integrity, symbolizing the possibility of reconciliation between historical grievances and individual ethical action. The final scenes feature a serene, luminous environment reflecting the protagonist's emotional and spiritual growth. Visual metaphors, light filtering through clouds, lotus petals floating on calm water, harmonious interactions between elemental forces, reinforce the themes of balance, unity, and moral clarity. Even the minor characters' resolutions align with thematic closure, mentors return to guiding roles, disciples demonstrate newfound understanding, and magical artifacts are respectfully restored to their designated places, maintaining cosmic and ethical balance. The global impact of Ne Zha 2 extends beyond commercial success. Academics have examined the film's treatment of myth, morality, and identity, comparing it with Western animated storytelling to highlight differences in narrative emphasis, ethical complexity, and cultural framing. Cross-cultural audiences have praised its emotional resonance, character depth, and visual splendor, demonstrating the universal appeal of stories rooted in specific cultural traditions yet addressing human experiences common to all societies. The film has sparked scholarly discourse on the globalization of animation, the adaptation of folklore, and the integration of philosophical concepts into mainstream entertainment, illustrating its significance as both an artistic and intellectual phenomenon. Merchandising, educational adaptations, and fan-created content have amplified the film's cultural presence. Action figures, books, and educational resources explore mythological background, character psychology, and symbolic motifs, allowing audiences to engage with the story in multiple formats. Fan art, animations, and online discussions expand interpretive possibilities, emphasizing the film's ability to inspire creative and intellectual participation. The engagement of viewers at this level highlights Ne Zha 2's role not just as a cinematic event but as a cultural touchstone, fostering dialogue, education, and artistic exploration. In conclusion, the detailed examination of minor characters, magical sequences, and cultural references illustrates the remarkable depth and sophistication of Ne Zha 2. Each element, no matter how small, is carefully designed to contribute to narrative clarity, thematic resonance, and emotional engagement. The combination of psychological complexity, symbolic richness, technical mastery, and cultural authenticity elevates the film beyond mere entertainment, positioning it as a landmark achievement in animation. By exploring identity, morality, legacy, and the reconciliation of conflicting forces, Ne Zha 2 offers audiences a profound, multifaceted experience, ensuring its enduring impact on global cinema, cultural education, and the evolution of animated storytelling. Ne Zha, the film's protagonist, begins in a fragile state following the events of the first movie. Both he and his friend Ao Bing survive in spirit form, and for part of the story, they share a single body. Throughout the movie, Ne Zha transitions from a rebellious, impulsive youth into a responsible and mature hero. He grapples with the weight of his powers, the consequences of his choices, and the moral responsibilities of his actions. By the film's conclusion, Ne Zha has achieved full physical and spiritual restoration. He embraces his dual heritage, blending his demon origins with his human upbringing, and forms a lasting bond with Ao Bing, solidifying his role as a protector and guardian figure. Ao Bing, the Dragon Prince and son of Ao Guang, faces his own struggles with identity and loyalty. Initially torn between his dragon heritage and his friendship with Ne Zha, he must navigate complex emotions and allegiances. Sharing Ne Zha's body temporarily forces Ao Bing to confront his limitations and desires. By the end of the film, Ao Bing makes the conscious choice to remain with Ne Zha rather than retreat to the sea with other dragons. This act symbolizes the rejection of prejudice and a willingness to embrace unity and collaboration, making him a central figure in bridging the gap between dragons and humans. Lady Yin, Ne Zha's mother, plays a pivotal role in the climax of the story. Though she was previously petrified, she sacrifices herself during the final confrontation, using her life force to protect Ne Zha, Ao Bing, and the other heroes from the lethal fire of Wu Yang's cauldron. Her heroic death emphasizes the themes of maternal love, selflessness, and the personal cost of protecting others. Lady Yin's sacrifice becomes a defining moment for Ne Zha, both emotionally and symbolically, providing him with the strength to transform fully into his empowered form. Tai Zhenren, Ne Zha's wise and patient master, serves as a guiding force throughout the film. He helps Ne Zha and Ao Bing navigate the spiritual dangers and the treachery of the celestial sect. His guidance and moral clarity are essential for the protagonist's survival and growth. Tai survives the events of the movie and continues as a mentor figure, representing wisdom, stability, and the importance of ethical decision-making amidst chaos and conflict. Ao Guang, the Dragon King and father of Ao Bing, initially appears as a potential adversary due to his anger and protective instincts over his son. However, his character evolves as he cooperates with Ne Zha and other allies. By the end of the film, Ao Guang leads the surviving dragons into exile beneath the sea, preserving their lives while stepping back from ongoing conflicts. His transformation from a distant, potentially antagonistic figure into a protective and understanding leader underscores the film's theme of personal growth and reconciliation. The main antagonist, Wu Yang, leader of the celestial sect, orchestrates much of the conflict through manipulation and deceit. He engineers attacks under the pretense of justice while secretly pursuing his own ambition to gain magical power and immortality. Using the cauldron to transform enemies into elixirs, Wu Yang embodies corruption, moral hypocrisy, and the dangers of unchecked authority. Though he is defeated in the climactic battle, Wu Yang escapes, leaving room for future conflict and emphasizing the idea that corruption is rarely fully eradicated without vigilance. Shen Gongbao, a demon warrior, occupies a morally ambiguous position in the story. Initially allied with Wu Yang, he is caught between loyalty to his father, his own values, and the demands of the celestial sect. By the conclusion of the film, he survives but remains a character with uncertain allegiances, potentially setting the stage for future narrative developments. His arc highlights the tension between personal morality and external pressures, a recurring theme in the movie. The minor allies and side characters, including townspeople, Ne Zha's friends, and other minor immortals, contribute to both the defense of Chintang Pass and the climactic confrontation with the celestial sect. While some survive and continue to aid the heroes, others fall victim to the dangers of the battle, particularly the cauldron ritual. These characters' fates underscore the stakes of the conflict and the cost of heroism, emphasizing that the world of Ne Zha too is dangerous and morally complex. Members of the celestial sect, particularly those loyal to Wu Yang, are also affected by the story's resolution. Many of them are defeated during the climactic battle, and Wu Yang's betrayal exposes their moral failings. Several sect members either abandon him or face destruction, highlighting the consequences of blind loyalty and the importance of discernment when following authority. Their arcs contribute to the broader themes of justice, corruption, and accountability that permeate the film. By the end of Ne Zha 2, the fates of the main characters are clearly delineated. Ne Zha, Ao Bing, Tai Zhenren, El Guang, and select allies survive, while Lady Yin and several minor heroes make the ultimate sacrifice. Wu Yang and Shen Gongbao escape, leaving potential for future narrative developments. These outcomes reinforce the central themes of identity, choice, redemption, and unity across differences. The narrative emphasizes that while personal sacrifice and struggle are inevitable, the bonds of friendship, love, and moral courage ultimately determine the outcome of conflict. In Ne Zha 2, the central character, Ne Zha, functions as both a mythic archetype and a deeply human figure. As the reincarnation of the demon orb, he carries an inherent legacy of fear, prejudice, and destructive potential, which mirrors the broader societal tendency to judge individuals based on their origins rather than their actions. Throughout the film, Ne Zha struggles to reconcile his innate power with the moral responsibility it demands, reflecting the timeless mythic theme of the anti-hero or rebel figure who must forge their own identity against the expectations of society. His journey is not simply about defeating external enemies, it is a profound exploration of self-discovery, moral choice, and the pursuit of justice in a world that initially misunderstands and fears him. The dual presence of Ao Bing's spirit within him adds an extra layer of complexity, forcing Ne Zha to negotiate internal balance alongside external conflict, and highlighting themes of coexistence and the reconciliation of opposing forces. Ao Bing, the reincarnation of the Spirit Pearl, serves as Ne Zha's moral counterpoint and thematic foil. While Ne Zha embodies chaos, rebellion, and raw potential, Ao Bing represents nobility, calm reasoning, and selfless sacrifice. Their intertwined existence within a single body becomes a powerful metaphor for the balance between opposites, demon versus dragon, chaos versus order, impulse versus conscience. Ao Bing's presence emphasizes the importance of empathy, cooperation, and inner harmony, showing that true strength often lies in the ability to integrate conflicting forces rather than dominate them. The relationship between Ne Zha and Ao Bing is a central emotional core of the film, illustrating the possibility of friendship, understanding, and mutual growth even amid profound differences. The film's antagonist, Master Wu Yang, embodies the dangers of rigid authority and institutionalized hypocrisy. As the leader of the Chan sect, he initially presents himself as a mentor figure, offering guidance and the promise of moral and cosmic order. However, his actions reveal ambition, cruelty, and a willingness to manipulate others for personal gain, turning the trials he sets into instruments of oppression. Wu Yang's character serves as a symbolic critique of dogmatic power structures that suppress individuality and enforce conformity. Through his arc, the narrative examines the destructive potential of unquestioned authority and highlights the need for critical thought, moral courage, and resistance against systemic injustice. Ao Guang, the Dragon King of the East Sea and father of Ao Bing, represents another form of authority, one burdened by grief, familial loyalty, and the desire for revenge. His initial rage at what he perceives as the death of his son demonstrates the peril of allowing personal emotion to dictate actions. Symbolically, Ao Guang embodies the struggle between justice and vengeance, authority and empathy. He also reflects the plight of oppressed or marginalized groups. The dragons, in this instance, have been historically persecuted by the celestial order, and Ao Guang's decisions mirror the tension between protecting his kin and confronting systemic injustice. This duality adds layers of moral ambiguity to the narrative, forcing both characters and audience to navigate complex ethical terrain. The mortal parental figures, Lady Yin and Li Jing, provide grounding in human emotion and familial love. Lady Yin symbolizes maternal compassion and the protective instincts of the family, serving as an emotional anchor amid the mythic chaos. Her unwavering care for Ne Zha, even in the face of cosmic upheaval, underscores themes of nurture, loyalty, and the human consequences of supernatural conflicts. Li Jing, meanwhile, embodies the tension between duty, leadership, and moral responsibility. As co-governor of Chintang Pass, he must navigate the delicate balance between protecting his community and honoring ethical principles, highlighting the broader theme of responsible governance in the face of complex societal and cosmic challenges. Taiyi Zhenren, the immortal mentor, embodies the possibility of hope, rebirth, and guidance. Using mystical tools like the seven-colored sacred lotus, Taiyi enables the protagonists to reconstruct their physical forms, representing both literal and symbolic renewal. His presence highlights the theme of second chances and the potential for moral and spiritual regeneration, bridging the mortal and divine realms. Through Taiyi, the film conveys that redemption is attainable not through passive intervention but through a combination of guidance, effort, and self-awareness. The dragons as a collective, alongside the broader demonic and mystical populations, function as symbols of marginalized or oppressed groups. Their stories emphasize the moral complexity of othered beings, showing that good and evil cannot simply be assigned based on birth or species. Through the interactions between dragons, demons, and the immortal sect, the film critiques prejudice, fear of difference, and systemic oppression, advocating for empathy, understanding, and the reassessment of societal assumptions. Finally, the narrative as a whole interrogates themes of identity, choice, and moral agency. By intertwining personal growth with mythic storytelling, Ne Zha 2 transforms traditional tales of gods, demons, and magical artifacts into a reflection on universal human concerns. Characters must navigate challenges that test their loyalty, courage, and ethical convictions, revealing that true heroism lies not in raw power but in the conscious decisions one makes amid complexity. The interplay between personal identity and societal expectation, between authority and resistance, between rebirth and redemption, gives the film a philosophical depth rare in large-scale animated blockbusters. In conclusion, Ne Zha 2 functions as both a spectacle and a profound mythic meditation on identity, morality, and social structures. Each character, from the protagonists Ne Zha and Ao Bing to antagonists like Master Wuyang and figures such as Ao Guang, serves not only as a driver of plot but as a symbolic representation of broader themes. By blending action, fantasy, and moral inquiry, the film invites viewers to consider the importance of empathy, the danger of rigid authority, and the transformative potential of self-discovery and reconciliation. Its enduring impact lies in its ability to fuse ancient Chinese mythology with universal themes, making it a landmark in animated cinema worldwide.